Morals. Morals are the prevailing standards of behavior that enable people to live cooperatively in groups. Moral refers to what society sanctions as right and acceptable. Most people tend to act morally and follow societal guidelines. Morality often requires that people sacrifice their own short-term interests for the benefit of society. People or entities that are indifferent to right and wrong are considered amoral, while those who do evil acts are considered immoral. While some moral principles seem to transcend time and culture, such as fairness, generally speaking, morality is not fixed. Morality describes the particular values of a specific group at a specific point in time. Historically, morality has been closely connected to religious traditions, but today its significance is equally important to the secular world. For example, businesses and government agencies have codes of ethics that employees are expected to follow. Some philosophers make a distinction between morals and ethics, but many people use the terms morals and ethics interchangeably when talking about personal beliefs, actions, or principles. For example, it's common to say, "My morals prevent me from cheating." It's also common to use ethics in this sentence instead. So, morals are the principles that guide individual conduct within society. And while morals may change over time, they remain the standards of behavior that society uses to judge right and wrong.
All right. Let me get my mic together, and you already know. So before I get started today, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to episode 6 of the podcast. Little by little, we getting things together around here. And today we're going to talk about morals. And I feel like this is a really important topic because a lot of us have an understanding of what morals are, but we don't really understand how complex what morals is, right? This is what determines the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. So, Paul, do me a favor real quick and bring up this definition of morality because we're going to cook today a little bit.
Roger that.
So, getting into it, morality. Principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. So, for a lot of us, our first introduction to morality was in the Garden of Eve. The Garden of Eden with the story of Adam and Eve. And so, on the episode that I was talking to you about how consciousness originated in the mind, so did morality, right? Because morality is that decision-making process that allows you to choose between good and evil, right? So this is the very foundation of who we are as individuals, right? The thing that allows you to have somebody in your house, you determine their moral foundation, right? You're not going to let a thief into your house, but the only way you're going to know if they're a thief is if you evaluate their moral foundation. How do they live their life, right? Somebody that you know is a thief, you're not going to let them into your house. You're not knowingly going to get in a relationship with a promiscuous woman, right? Because you know her moral values are messed up. So if you choose to put yourself in that position, it's because you didn't really correctly evaluate somebody's morality. What prevents us from waking up every morning and being pieces of shit, right? What stops us from shooting somebody that aggravated us in the car? You know, a lot of people, they got road rage, right? What prevents us from getting out the car and shooting somebody? Well, a lot of that is the law, right? But a lot of that is our human nature, that we don't necessarily want to kill people for every little petty reason or every little petty disagreement that we have with them, right? So the thing about morals is they change over time. So just like in antiquity, we had a situation where their set of morals that they had in antiquity were completely different than the set of morals that we have now in 2020. Their lifestyle, their governments, their environment required them to be a totally different type of people than we are today. We have the luxury of technology. We have the luxury of modern medicine. We have the luxury of modern science. So it makes our life a lot more efficient. So our moral system is more geared around this modern system of living. However, we go back 3,000 to 4,000 years, right? We're gonna start. Look, we're gonna go back. And matter of fact, we're gonna start with um, a morality system that originated in Egypt, in Kemet. Egypt was the name that the Greeks gave it, but the original name was Kemet. So you can put my screen up here.
There you go.
All right. So this first system now is debatable whether this was the very first system, but it was one of the first systems of morality and law and structure. And you know, the principles of Ma'at existed 4,000 years before the Bible was even conceived. Right here it says 42 principles of Ma'at, who is known as the Egyptian goddess of the justice, around 4,400 years ago, 2,000 years before the Ten Commandments. So before we even get into the concept of the Ten Commandments, right, for most of us, that is our morality structure. That is where we get our idea of how to live our life on a basic foundation. There was these 42 principles of Ma'at that the people in Kemet lived under. And we're going to go through some of these, and some of these are going to look familiar to you. So the first one is, I have not committed sin. I have not committed robbery with violence. I have not stolen. I have not slain men or women. I have not stolen food. I have not swindled offerings. I have not stolen from God or goddess. I have not told lies. I have not carried away food. I have not cursed. I have not closed my ears to truth. I have not committed adultery. I have not made anyone cry. I have not felt sorrow without reason. I have not assaulted anyone. I am not deceitful. I have not stolen anyone's land. I have not been an eavesdropper. I have not falsely accused anyone. I have not been angry without reason. I have not seduced anyone's wife. I have not polluted myself. I have not terrorized anyone. I have not disobeyed the law. I have not been exclusively angry. I have not cursed the god or the goddess. I have not behaved with violence. I have not caused disruption of peace. I have not acted hastily or without thought. I have not overstepped my boundaries of concern. I have not exaggerated my words when speaking. I have not worked evil. I have not used evil thoughts, words, or deeds. I have not polluted the water. I have not spoken angrily or arrogantly. I have not cursed anyone in thought, word, or deeds. I have not placed myself on a pedestal. I have not stolen what belongs to the god or goddess. I have not stolen from or disrespected the deceased. I have not taken food from a child. I have not acted with insolence. I have not destroyed property belonging to the god or goddess. That's all 42, right? So a lot of them look familiar. A lot of them we see were used in the creation of the Ten Commandments, most notably, thou shalt not kill, right? That's like one of the most famous commandments that we identify with because, nobody wants to go to jail for the rest of their life for murder, right? But this was the moral structure of ancient Egypt. So we can see how and why ancient Egypt was such a successful civilization, why they were able to accomplish so much that 2,000, 3,000 years later, we're still talking about them because their moral foundation was rooted in basic logical truths. These are basic common sense things, right? But over time, these things change, right? Because now we have things like organized religion, and we got politics, and we got all these different streams of what I call morality systems, right? They try to take you away from the basic common logical common sense ways of living life and try to take you into what is called moral relativity, which is what I'm going to get into later. So after the Egyptians, another popular civilization during the time was the Mesopotamians. And the Mesopotamians, a lot of you know them as the Babylonians, and they had their own system, their own code. So you could bring up the slide over here. So the Hammurabi Code, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This phrase, along with the idea of written laws, goes back to ancient Mesopotamian culture that prospered long before the Bible was written or the civilizations of the Greeks or Romans flowered. An eye for an eye is a paraphrase of Hammurabi's Code, a collection of 282 laws inscribed on an upright stone pillar. The code was found by French archaeologists in 1901 while excavating the ancient city of Susa, which is in modern-day Iran. Hammurabi is the best known and most celebrated of all Mesopotamian kings. He ruled the Babylonian Empire from 1792 to 50 BCE. Although he was concerned with keeping order in his kingdom, this was not the only reason for compiling the list of laws. When he began ruling the city-state of Babylon, he had control of no more than 50 square miles of territory. As he conquered other city-states and his empire grew, he saw the need to unify various groups he controlled. So now we see that these ideas, right, these moral foundations and these laws, this is around when they first started getting organized into a structured system, right? It says here he needed a way to unify, right? So the way that you get when you're conquering empires, you got to understand each one of these lands that they conquered, these people have a different culture, they're different nationalities, and they worship different gods, right? But you have to have something that unifies all these different colonies together. And this is why they create laws, and this is why they create a moral foundation. And this is a large reason why religion was created, because religion is law and morality wrapped up together in one thing. So in the Babylonian times, this is around the time that the ancient Hebrews were in captivity. And the ancient Hebrews, they took a lot of these ideas and their laws and they put it in their sacred text, which is known as the Torah, or they have another book that they use called the Talmud. And the Talmud is basically an extension of the Hammurabi Codex, right? So now we get into the Ten Commandments, right? Because the Ten Commandments were written after the Hammurabi Codex, and these came from the ancient Hebrews. So a lot of us are familiar with the Ten Commandments, but I'm just going to go over them real quick. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy mother and thy father. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet. Now, after looking at the 42 laws of Ma'at, the Ten Commandments seem pretty simple and a pretty simple generalization of how we should live our lives. I feel that the 42 laws of Ma'at were a lot more detailed and a lot more concise on the message that they were trying to deliver.
I agree.
Yet the Ten Commandments seems to be the dominant moral foundation that we wind up using.
Dumbed it down.
Yeah, keeping it simple, right? Because a lot of this is without context, right? I feel like the laws of Ma'at give us a lot. Even if you read the Talmud and if you read the Hammurabi, they give you context as to why you should react like this, why you shouldn't do this. So there's not really a lot of context with the Hebrew scriptures. Now, why is that? I don't know. We'll get into that when we talk about the Bible specifically. But these are the things that formed our moral fabric of who we are. So now, over 2,000 years, we have a lot of changing. We have a lot of technology changes how we operate in the world, right? And politics changes how we operate in the world. So now, when we formulate a thought based on our morality, it's formulated within the paradigm of what we believe in, right? So Christian, their moral system is on the foundation of Christianity. Muslims, their moral foundation is based on the principles of Islam. Democrats, their moral foundation is based on the principles of liberalism. And same thing, et cetera, et cetera. For whatever paradigm you're locked into, your system of morality, your moral foundation is going to reflect that. Excuse me. So now we get into the term moral relativism. Moral relativism, and this is the absence of morals, right? Or this is the concept that morals are like a man-made concept. So I'm going to play a little short video here so you can get an understanding of what moral relativism is, and then we're going to get into this a little bit more deep.
Moral relativism. Moral relativism is the idea that there is no universal or absolute set of moral principles. It's a version of morality that advocates to each her own, and those who follow it often say, "Who am I to judge?" Moral relativism can be understood in several ways. Descriptive moral relativism, also known as cultural relativism, says that moral standards are culturally defined, which is generally true. Indeed, there may be a few values that seem nearly universal, such as honesty and respect. But many differences appear across cultures when people evaluate moral standards around the world. Metaethical moral relativism states that there are no objective grounds for preferring the moral values of one culture over another. Societies make their moral choices based on their unique beliefs, customs, and practices. And in fact, people tend to believe that the right moral values are the values that exist in their own culture. Normative moral relativism is the idea that all societies should accept each other's differing moral values, given that there are no universal moral principles. Most philosophers disagree, however. For example, just because bribery is okay in some cultures doesn't mean that other cultures cannot rightfully condemn it. Moral relativism is on the opposite end of the continuum from moral absolutism, which says that there is always one right answer to any ethical question. Indeed, those who adhere to moral relativism would say, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do."
All right. All right, let me fix my mic. So yeah, so basically that is in a nutshell what moral relativism is. Now, I am someone that I kind of understand where they come from with moral relativism because I've used the term "when is in Rome, do as the Romans," right? And sometimes some standards that are accepted in one culture are unacceptable in another culture. A perfect example of this is shaking hands, right? In America, we shake hands, and this is something that we do as a sign of respect, as a sign of greeting. If you were to do this in Japan, they'll probably look at you funny, right? They usually salute themselves with a bow. Now, they probably will shake your hand out of respect, understanding that you're an American, but they don't necessarily look at the handshake like something that's a sign of respect. Another idea that moral relativism is something that they're slowly pushing the world to. Right? They want us locked out of these paradigms. They want us pushed out of these ideas that we've held on to since kids. Right? It's a situation where we have people that are actively working to put us in a world where anything goes. Right? They want this world to be built in a anything goes type of environment where if you want to sleep with a dog, you can sleep with a dog and nobody would judge you. Right? This is what moral relativism is.
Why can't we just have like moral intelligence?
Well, that comes from discernment, right? So when we go back to the episode when we were talking about for the how the brain operates, right? Discernment is one of these things where we need to be able to determine if something is good or bad. Like one of the first decisions that we make when we do something, is this good or is this bad? And then once we make that decision, then we go to the next set of decision-making process. If you decide something is good, then you continue with the process. If you decide that something is bad, now you have to make a moral decision, right? Do I want to continue with this bad decision even though I know that this is bad, right? Now you got to be willing to deal with the consequences of whatever it is that you do now, right? Because your moral decision process was flawed. So the result of your decision process is also going to be flawed. You understand? Now, if you take your time and you discern, it's like, this is a good decision that I'm making, and you carry it out, 9 times out of 10, the result of that decision is going to be a good decision because you were solid in your moral evaluation, right? Adam and Eve, right? Was eating from the apple a morally sound decision? This is real debatable, right? It depends who you ask, right? If you ask the Christian, they will say you no, because it was in a direct violation of God's law as they perceive it. If you ask an occultist, they would say no, because it freed humanity from the ignorance of their consciousness, right? So this is a really huge disconnect on morals, right? Conversation we were having earlier about polygamy and marriage, right? Is polygamy a man-made concept? Now we all ask ourselves our morals, okay? If we want to accept polygamy for it is because our morals accept that, then we also have to be able to accept it the other way around. So if a woman comes to you and says she wants 4 husbands, and you accept the polygamy, right, as a moral foundation, you have to accept it the other way around. Or if you don't accept it, then it's flawed on both ends. And this is how morality works. How many of us trust our wives, right, our spouses, to leave them by themselves around men that are way better looking and way more money and way more powerful than you, right? Do you trust the moral foundation of the woman that you with? This is something that we don't really take into account when we're dating and we're looking for a spouse, right? Because we're just caught up in the moment trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. We don't even check if their moral foundation is sound, right? And that's why a lot of us find out in the long run that it usually isn't. And for women too. Like most women don't really take the time to check if the moral foundation of the person that they spending their time with is sound. For all you know, he could be a child molester, right? That might be part of his moral foundation. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people have a lot of different moral systems that they operate by. And this is something that we need to understand, you know. It's good to understand what are the different types of moral systems that are available out here. So I already touched on a few. You know, I touched on Christianity. All the organized religions are systems of morality. They're also a system of ethics, and they're also a system of laws. All these things are encompassed into one thing, right? We have politics. So if you're one of those people that are real political, 9 times out of 10, your system of morality is going to be determined if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican. Abortion, right? Most people that are for abortion are traditionally liberal, right? So your moral foundation about how you feel about abortion is rooted in liberalism. If you're somebody that supports the right to bear arms, that's something that's rooted in conservatism, right? So more naturally, your morality is rooted in that idea of conservatism. Now it's a little bit deeper than that because there's some people that, you know, they're for both. You know, I'm under the impression that a lot of people are really in the middle about how they feel about most things. They just don't want to admit it because that would imply that they're not living in a paradigm, and then that'll put them in a position where they'll get alienated by other people in their groups that they're trying to find solidarity with. So we're going to look at some really complex and we're going to look at some really silly systems of morality today. So we're going to go through 10 completely unorthodox systems of morality. These are systems that people join or people practice that are not necessarily things that you hear about every day or things that you know about, but we're going to get into it and we're going to see if you know somebody that might fit one of these systems. So, some believe that God's law defines right and wrong. Others believe that correct action is that which respects human life and follows principle of justice or virtue. Still, others contend that actions can only be judged by their outcome. Moral relativism holds that morality is relative to the culture which produces it, and that no universe principle of right and wrong can exist. But some morality systems, from our point of view, are just downright bizarre. So this first one that we're going to get into is called Yangism. The philosopher Yangtze, there's actually a river named after him in China. I don't know if his name specifically after him, but there is a Yangtze River in China. It's one of the biggest rivers in the world. So I don't know if they named it after him, but The philosopher Yangtze from the 4th century BC left no surviving works, meaning that his ideas must be gleaned from hostile critics and semi-mythological tales. According to these limited sources, Yangtze believed that human beings should only ever do what is in their self-interest or the interest of their family and close friends. Under the philosophy of Wei Wo, everything for myself, Yangtze emphasized the importance of sustaining your own life, staying genuine to yourself, and avoiding entanglement in external affairs. So basically, that is the basic concept. I don't want to. This is a long article, so I'm just gonna get into like the surface layer of each one. I'll put a link in the chat if anybody wants to read the article for themselves and really get deep into it. But I'm just gonna read like the basic idea of what these philosophies are. So basically, this is a real individualistic type of philosophy of moral system, right? He believed that you really shouldn't exert any type of energy into caring about anything outside of your immediate family, because there's not really anything that you could do for anybody else other than your immediate family. As we can see, this is a communistic idea, right? And it's not communism as we know in the modern world. This is communal, as in societal. The term is utilitarian, something like that. I can't pronounce it right now. It's stuck on the top of my tongue, but I'll get it together. But basically, the concept behind this is that, you just care for yourself. I'm worrying about my family. I'm worrying about the people around me, and I really don't have time to worry about anything else outside of that. So this next one is called antinomianism. This means against the law. Antinomianism is the belief that Christians who have been saved are not constrained by any kind of moral law. Some early Gnostic Christians believed that being saved through Christ meant that they didn't need to obey the laws of the Old Testament, which neither good nor bad deeds having any bearing on salvation. These early groups included the Simonians, who believed that nothing was truly good or bad, and the Carpocratians, who believed that undergoing every possible human experience would help them become like Jesus. The early Christian thinker Marcion believed that Old Testament law was given by the evil God known as the Demiurge, while the Gospels came from the good God through Jesus Christ. So this particular moral foundation comes from Gnosticism. And Gnosticism is the idea that the God of the Bible is a demigod, and he was created by a being called Sophia. And in his ignorance of not understanding that he was a demigod, he created the earth and created humans as a kind of like a way to feed his ego. So a lot of the old Christians in antiquity, they didn't believe in the concept of Yahweh, which was the God of the Old Testament. And this is why Gnosticism was very popular around that time. A lot of people don't realize the Hebrews never wrote the New Testament. The New Testament was written by the Greeks. The Hebrews and the Jews to this day do not acknowledge the New Testament. Only the Christian church acknowledges it as one text. But the Jews do not acknowledge the New Testament. So this is another system of morality. The next one here is desirism. Philosopher Joel Marx thinks morality, a set of rules that we are impelled to obey, is overall a terrible idea. Morality makes us angry, hypocritical, imprudent, stringent, and arrogant. And in the end, it's a useless guide to living unless you happen to be a philosopher who likes puzzles. Throwing any pretense to morality away, he argues, makes us tolerant, guilt-free, interesting, and compassionate. The best way to live your life is to figure out what you really want, prioritize it, and then work out how to achieve those ends in a way that conforms to your list of priorities. This is essentially the idea behind desirism, originally developed by Alonzo Fife as desire utilitarianism. Desirism argues that desire is the only thing that really impels people to act. Morals are simply abstract concepts, but if people desire pleasure, happiness, or the welfare of their children, then they will seek to achieve them. However, some desires are better than others in the sense that some desires better allow for our own satisfaction and the satisfaction of others. If a person is forced to choose between happiness and the welfare of their children, the desire they value the most will take precedence. Mm-hmm. So this is a situation where you are following your heart's desire, right? If I want to get up in the morning and, money is something that I want to focus all my attention to, then the idea behind this is that the end result of your desire will be the money that you're chasing. Now, the only problem with this is that some people desire things that are not necessarily good, like little kids, right? There's people that desire that, right? So this is why moral relativism has some flaws in its design, right? Because some people look at being child molesters as being good. This is why we need to have laws that establish the boundaries on the levels of moral foundations that we can have. So while some of these make sense on the surface, you got to understand there has to be a limitation to what we can establish as foundations for our morals, right? I used to like getting money on the corner really easy, right? But that you can't do that. It's illegal, right? And morally, it's immoral, right? Because I'm in the process of destroying my community in the process, chasing my desire to get money. This is why some of these ideas are flawed, right? Because the decision, the end result of me following my desire is probably going to be me in jail, which is not what I desired. So it's counterproductive of what I'm trying to accomplish.
And desirism this is probably the most dominant, dominant in America right now.
Right, because we live in a society where it's me, right? It's what I want to do. It's what I want to do, right? Yep. And we like to think that the decisions that we make don't affect other people, right? A lot of us don't realize that time on the time that we have on this planet is limited, right? And we don't really want to take the time to really think about, if you have children, right? You should be thinking about establishing a moral foundation from them. That doesn't mean they have to think exactly like you, right? But they should know not to steal. They should know not to touch things that are not theirs, right? They should know that people are not supposed to touch them in places where they're not, they're not supposed to. There's basic ideas and basic moral foundations that they should know. They should know not to kill people, right? They should know not to want to hurt people. These are basic ideas. Now, if the Bible is doing that for you, or if the Quran is doing that for you, or whatever spiritual text is doing that for you, then by all means keep doing it if it's working. But a lot of us are running around in the world with no moral foundation at all. We're living in an extreme state of moral relativism where I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And that's a problem. So this next system is called Cosmism. And in the late 19th century, the Russian mystic Nikolai Fedorov decided that the lack of love in the world was a problem. He believed there were two kinds of non-loving relationships: alienation between people and the alienation of the living from the dead. Universal salvation lay in overcoming both of those obstacles. Everything we do in this world inevitably leads to decay and death, so Fedorov believed that we should collectively use our God-given intelligence to counter natural death. This would mean achieving immortality by taming the body as a biological system, and then regulating natural disasters by taming the earth itself. Human evolution, meanwhile, will be directed towards self-feeding through chemical process similar to plants and algae. The next step, naturally, was resurrecting the dead by traveling into space to collect their particles and reconstituting the forms of everybody who has ever existed. Now, some of this might sound a little bit ridiculous on the surface, but what if I told you that there's people at the highest levels of government, at the highest levels of society, that have already been doing this for hundreds of years?
Been working on it all this time.
Okay, stem cell research, weather modification, right? The nuclear bomb. These are all examples of quantum physics. This is what that is, right? They're trying to tap into this cosmic energy. And they're trying to reinvent our existence, right? Looking for the fountain of youth.
They're trying to use intelligence to dissect the purpose and the design of things, so then you can reiterate it into genetically growing a heart, or genetically growing that limb back that got cut off. Or
So like the whole idea is that humans are never satisfied with what their creator or their higher power or what natural science evolved for them, right? So with us, it's always we're trying to live longer than we already live. We're trying to jump higher than we already jump. We're trying to run faster than we already run. So this idea that we could tap into this universal energies and stuff is something that's very prevalent even now, right?
What, the Hadron Collider? They're
Yeah.
smashing the
Opening
two
portals to
atoms
other
apart.
dimensions. There's humans that really believe this, that are really smart and really powerful, and they're actively pursuing these conquests. The television, the radio, right?
Yep.
All right, the next one on the list is homonoia. The ancient Greeks were known for their violent and fragmented city-state politics and their dismissal of all non-Greeks as barbarians. The philosophy of homonoia, meaning oneness of the mind or concord, turned that on its head. Taking the idea of philia or brotherly love, so the city of Philadelphia is named after this concept. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, philia, and expanding it beyond relations with friends. It was first applied within the city-states themselves, where philosophers such as Demosthenes supported the idea that all citizens of a city-state should subsume their social and political difference in the collective interest, creating a polity of one mind and one will. So, how the Greeks ran their government was everybody decided what was going to happen for the collective of the society, right? Now, they were able to do that because they were a much smaller population, right? But this idea, this is where the idea of Senate comes from, right? The Senate was originated in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the Senate and a Congress and a group of meeting people coming together to decide the idea of a country comes from this particular moral foundation, right? This is the type of thing that we don't really take into account now, right? Do we feel that we have an active process in the decision that our country makes? Like, that's a question that I'm posing to the viewers. Do you feel, outside of voting, that you have a say in what happens with your government? I mean, if you ask me, I'm going to say no, right? But in ancient Greek, they did have a say. Everybody that was of importance
The citizens.
had a say. And this is why they were very fragmented. This is why they did that, because they were very fragmented. Greece wasn't unified, right? It wasn't one country. It was a bunch of separate countries. And then they unified under Alexander. They unified under the later emperors. All right, so this next philosophy is called deep ecology. Dismissing the human-centric worldview of modern civilization, advocates of deep ecology believe that we need to develop a moral system that recognizes the value inherent in nature. Norwegian environmentalist Arne Naes invented the term in his 1973 article, The Shallow and the Deep, Long-Range Ecology Movement. Naes criticized the shallow reform approach, which sought to preserve the wilderness and biodiversity primarily for the benefit of humanity. Deep ecology, by contrast, he characterized as a major change in how we relate to the natural world, a substantial reorientation of our whole civilization. Deep ecology advocates biocentric egalitarianism, which dismisses the idea that humans have a higher value than other organisms, asserting that all living organisms have equal value and right to life. The complexity or level of intelligence in an organism is irrelevant. Another deep ecology tenet is metaphysical holism, the idea that there is no real division between the human and the non-human worlds, and that humans must achieve a form of enlightenment where they identify the self with the biosphere as a whole. Or as activist John C. describes it, I am protecting the rainforest develops into I am part of the rainforest protecting myself. So deep ecology is like somebody that identifies with the planet as a living being, right? They identify with the planet as something that's alive. They identify with all the living creatures on the earth as having an equal right to live here. Just
It
like
has a purpose.
for a purpose, right? So for them, the pigeon has just as much importance as your neighbor, and they live their life on that moral system, right? These are the type of people that are more liable to be vegans, right? These are the type of people that be like really nature oriented, people that you would probably see at the park, just really in tune with nature. So, I mean, like I guess some of these principles, they have valid concepts in them.
We could use intelligence to pick and sift through the gems out of each and one of these concepts to create a new one.
And that's really the same thing with religion too. You pick and choose the little gems that you need out of each one, right? Once you get locked into a paradigm, your spectrum of thought is limited to that religion. But when you're able to go study all of them, right? I study comparative religion, right? I study all religions, dark religions, light religions, paganism, all of it, right? And from each one, I'm able to find truth. And you're going to see what I'm talking about when we get into some of these. So this next one is, lo and behold, Satanism, right? So before I get into Satanism, right? This is Satanism. This is a commercial form of Satanism. This is not that Satanism that you would see in like a movie where they're sacrificing somebody, or you know what I'm saying? This is commercial level Satanism that was initiated by a man named Anton LaVey in the 1960s. Okay. And it was kind of like a celebrity, you know, Hollywood type of Satanism where they were basically like what Scientology is now. Okay. Right?
Yep.
But let's look at the tenets of what Satanism is, right? So we can see how you could dig into, no matter how flawed or how ridiculous it sounds, where you could find things that are valuable to you. So Satanism has a moral system typical of other left-hand path movements, such as Thelema, Tantric Magic, and Chaos Magic. The left-hand path name was borrowed from the Indian Tantric tradition and was reinvented in the Western occult tradition by Madame Blavatsky in the 19th century. Left-hand path philosophies are highly individualistic with an emphasis on free thought and moral relativism. Satanism in particular believes that morality is something that must be decided by each individual, dismissing the legalistic moral structures of traditional philosophies. Instead of the more usual moral commandments, Satanism has guidelines based on self-preservation and the law of retribution, meaning taking merciless revenge on those who slight you. The self is all important to Satanism. Discovering what one likes, standing up for one's right to like it, and pursuing that desire is among the most sacred of tasks. The cardinal sin is stupidity, and other satanic sins such as arrogance, lack of compassion, herd mentality, self-deceit, and failure to learn from mistakes are all considered the result of stupidity.
Well, we definitely don't want to be stupid.
Right. So again, they have some tenets that you could be like, well, this doesn't sound that bad on the surface, right? But then we get into this promotion of moral relativism, right? Moral relativity, where, you know, the individual is deciding what is right and what's wrong.
Due to the circumstances in the moment of time.
Right. And this is what allows child molesters and pedophiles to exist. And this is the reason why, part of the reason why I'm doing this show is because the reason why we have this big call for this Save the Children campaign, right, is because there is a lot of pedophiles out here, and they were given this excuse by the medical community, right? I'm going to show you guys something at the end of the show. This is why I don't have any faith in the medical community. I'm going to show you something at the end of the show. I'm going to continue with this first. Liberal Islam. This is different from conservative Islam. Conservative Islam has two different sects. You have Shiite and you have the Sunni. Their beliefs are different. You also have an extreme form of Islam called Wahhabism. And you have Sufism, which is a mystical form. So there's different forms of Islam here. So this particular form of Islam is called liberal Islam. The popular view of Islam in the West often fails to reflect the rich history of Islamic liberalism. In the 19th and 20th centuries, an influential group of liberals known as the Young Ottomans, not to be confused with the similarly named Young Turks, sought to import Western liberal democracy and adapt it for the Islamic context. In 1868, the Turkish intellectual Namık Kemal wrote, "Being created free by Allah, man is naturally obliged to benefit from this divine gift. State authority should be realized in the way which will least limit the freedom of the individual. These ideas helped bring out reforms that limited the power of the Sultan, protected the rights of citizens, and gave equality to religious and ethnic minorities." In the same period, Egyptian scholar Muhammad Abdu, pictured above, referred to the Society of Paris as Islam without Muslims, believing that the liberal West exemplified the very traits that should exist in an Islamic society. So liberal Islam is a Western form of Islam where they're not doing the 3 prayers every day, and they're not doing, the rituals in traditional Islam, and that's conservative Islam. That's Orthodox Islam, right? This is more of a Western. So if you ever been to somewhere like Jordan, or if you ever been somewhere like Lebanon, you might see this form of liberal Islam prevalent over the more conservative, stricter forms. In Saudi Arabia, they don't use this. They use Wahhabism, and it's a real strict form. They use Sharia law, and Sharia law is a real strict conservative form of Islam. Number two is called Agora, and Agora derives from the Sanskrit word Gora, meaning darkness or fear, but expresses the opposite, meaning usually interpreted as illumination or awareness. It represents the most extreme form of Tantra, a set of practices aimed at achieving spiritual enlightenment. The Agori sadhus believe in indifference to the world, which they achieve through an openness to their own lower natures. While other sadhus are forbidden in engaging in sex, eating meat, or drinking alcohol, Agori sadhus eat meat, smoke marijuana, drink liquor, and engage in ritual copulation with prostitutes. In fact, they eat anything including human flesh, feces, urine, bodily fluids, carrion, and the ashes from funeral pyres. They believe this reflects the oneness of everything and helps them to break the illusion of reality. So these people are really extreme, right?
Extreme.
These people, they don't see this is an extreme form of moral relativity where they're so in tune with their primitive animal nature that, you know, anything goes for them, you know. And as wild as this sounds, this is where they're trying to push the world to. Maybe not to this extreme, but a civilized version of it, right? I mean, a lot of us eat meat, smoke marijuana, and drink liquor, and engage in ritual copulation with prostitutes. I don't. A lot of you might, but there's people that do, right? So this is the thing, right? These are not new concepts, and these are not new ideas of morality in the world. These are things that existed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The Agori also believe that close association with death will rid them of the fear of it, weakening the cosmic illusion. Thus, they perform a great number of their rituals in cemetery grounds, cover themselves in cremation ash, and drink from human skulls. Right? Very primitive form of a moral system, but it works for them. This is what works for them, right? Now, if we was to see something like this, we'll probably be like, what's going on here, right? But it works for them. But this is why, this is the flaw in the argument of moral relativism. There has to be some type of limit to what we can allow and what we cannot allow, or else you're just going to have everybody doing what they want to do. All right, so this last one on the list is called Discordianism. And Discordianism has been described as a joke disguised as a religion, but also as a religion disguised as a joke. It began in the 1960s with the publication of its holy text, Principia Discordia, or How I Found the Goddess and What I Did to Her Once I Found Her. The Discordians worship Eris, the Greco-Roman goddess of chaos, and hold free thought as their most important value. Claiming that freedom is the only obligation of mankind. There is no such thing as a universal moral wrong, since such a concept would infringe on freedom. By extension, natural rights also don't exist, since the existence of rights implies that some things are not rights, which again infringes on freedom. The morality of an action is based on the freedom inherent to that action, and therefore the consequences of an action are irrelevant to its ethics. Discordianism also holds that introducing confusion and disorder into society creates the conditions of freedom and thought. Confusion causes people to think. Thinking is good. Confusion is good. Discordianism is highly critical of the so-called golden rule, Western philosophy's recurring moral theme: do unto others as you will have others do unto you. According to this logic, you could justify doing almost anything to anyone. The faith does suggest some loose moral guidelines and indications of correct behavior, but Discordianism dismisses the idea of universal moral imperatives, believing that morality is relative, based on human cultural constructs, and ultimately up to the individual. Basically, the Summa Discordia wraps it up succinctly. Goddess forbids nothing, but nobody likes an asshole. So again, this is a more modern form of moral relativity, right? And like again, they're trying to steer us away from traditional morality, right, where we have a clear distinction between right and wrong, into this new world of moral relativism where you could do what you want to do. If nobody sees you doing it, is it really wrong, right? If a tree falls in the woods, did it really fall, type of thing, right? This is where they're trying to get the world to go to, and a lot of people are living their life like this, and it's causing them to live a life that's causing a lot of negative consequences for them, right? Because they're not understanding that there's some things that are objectively bad and there's some things that are objectively good. And again, child pedophilia is objectively bad, right? So if you're one of those people that feel that, well, it's a sexual orientation, right? Your moral foundation is flawed in every capacity. It's flawed. And the consequence for your flawed moral foundation is probably going to lead to your death, most likely. So I'm just throwing that out there. Okay? So I don't know if anybody of you, I don't know if you got the message earlier, but if anybody want to chime in on the show today, I got the Discord chat open. All you would have to do is make you a Discord account, and then you can come in and we put you right here on the show, right? One of the things I wanted to chime in about is about a post that I put earlier. I did a little social experiment on Facebook, and the whole process of this experiment was to see where people's moral foundations were and to really evaluate if your moral foundation is sound, is it flawed, is it, So the question asked was, you're in a lifeboat with 8 other people. The lifeboat can't hold everyone and will capsize soon. The only way to avoid killing everyone is to throw one person off the boat. One of the lifeboat passengers is a grievously injured woman who is certain to die soon, but she is alert and fully aware of the issue at hand. Could you throw that passenger overboard knowing you would be saving the others, and the person being thrown off would know what you're doing? So a lot of people had no hesitation pressing 1. And that is not a wrong answer. Matter of fact, there is no wrong answer on this, because I am not a judge of your moral compass. The individual is the judge of the moral compass, right? If you feel that throwing this woman off the boat and saving the lives is the priority, you're right. It is. Because you're saving 7 other lives, and you're sacrificing 1 in the process. But what I want you to understand is there's somebody in the government that thinks the same way about you. They think that you're already dead, right? Because you're already labeled by law as legally dead at sea. Okay? So there's a government, the people in the government, they look at people sacrificed in 9/11, right? And we're going to go invade a country. These 2,300 people that died, it was for the greater good, right? Or anytime somebody dies, right? And let me see how I want to put this. Every time we go into a country and we destroy it and we kill 500,000 other citizens, it's for the greater good, right? This is the logic that's behind this type of thinking. So 2, right? If you pick 2, that's the right answer. There's no wrong answer here, right? But now let's apply this on a bigger scale. Somebody's molesting your kid, right? And they know, but they don't want to do nothing about it because it's really not their responsibility. Is that moral foundation sound? Is it a valid moral foundation to have? Kicking the can down the road, letting somebody else have the responsibility to do something that you're supposed to do. Because when we make these moral decisions, we got to look at them on a bigger level than just us as an individual, because the world operates under these same laws. The same laws that operate us in our individual lives operates the world on a grand scale. If you pick 3, right? 3 is the right answer, right? I'm not putting this on my conscience. I'm not going to throw somebody into the water to get eaten by the sharks, right? But now we're going to put this on a bigger scale. By you not taking the action that need to be done, right? Your lack of action caused the death of 7 other people too in the process, right? So each one of these moral systems is flawed, but they're all right answers. This is what I was trying to accomplish by this. So I didn't want nobody really thinking too hard about it. You could have just typed in number 1, number 2, number 3. I was gonna touch into each one of these, but these are all right answers that are flawed, right? So which one of these do you think will probably garner the best results? Probably number 1, right? If I had to choose one that was gonna garner me the best results, For the collective, it would be number one, right? Because in the process, I'm saving 7 other people. So I have to weigh the lives of 7 versus 1. So for me, this is a simple concept. But I will also have to live with the consequence of my decision and carry the conscience that I threw somebody alive while they were still alive into the water. This is what morality forces us to do. Every day we have to make these decisions, right? You go to your friend's house, his girlfriend is there, your friend is not home. Now you got to test the morality of both your friend and your woman, right? What's your girl's moral standards? What's your friend's moral standards, right? If they both flawed in their moral process, decision process, right? 9 times out of 10, you're going to have something going on, a love triangle with something going on right underneath your nose because you failed as an individual to identify people with flawed moral systems. That's the mistake that all of us do. I did it. You do it. Everybody does it.
We all do.
You know what I'm saying? All of us been in bad relationships. All of us done had friendships that done fizzled out because we found out they just flawed individuals. The things that they like to do, I don't necessarily like to do. You know what I'm saying? You want to smoke crack? You can smoke crack by yourself. That is not part of my moral foundation. That's not a part of my ethics. That's not a part of what I like to do to have a good time, right? This is why we need to work on this as individuals. As long as we working on this as individuals, you will see in the long run that the results of your decisions are going to turn out to be positive. Do you got anybody in the chat that wanted to talk? I don't know. I can't really see the chat. I don't know, but we got like about 5 minutes left. If anybody wanted to chime in, I don't know if we have anybody in there.
I'm checking it out right now. I did make sure that the link was on Facebook.
But that's cool. But with that being said, though,
nobody joined so far. They were
it's important that our moral foundations. We go through the process. So one of the first things that we want to do is ask ourselves: is this right or is this wrong? Is this good or is this evil? Those 4 decision process right there are going to determine the results of everything else in the process of the decision. If it's morally sound, right? You see some money on the floor that ain't yours, and you know who it belongs to. The sound moral foundation will tell you just give the money back to who it is. A flawed decision process is going to be like, let me take this money, right? These are the things that we deal with every day as individuals.
I think we had some activity in the chat. I'm making sure we didn't miss anything, but the link is there if anybody wants to join.
Yeah, the chat is a little bit. That's the only issue with the chat is that it's a little bit delayed. So I see it about a good 30 to 40 seconds late. You know what I'm saying?
Here I am. She says, "Here I am. Sorry, I'm late."
I mean, you guys could type up what you want, and I'll read them out loud. You could type in.
Like I said, the link was shared inside Facebook chat. If you click the link, you'll join another room. It should leave that window open, but when you join another room, I will see you here, and then I can invite you to the interview room where we can hear you live on the stream.
I'm gonna ask a question to the viewers. Where does your moral foundation come from? So this is an individual question for everybody that's watching. Where does your moral foundation come from? It could be the Bible. It could be the Quran. It could be the Vedas. It could be the Talmud. It could be the Democrats. It could be the Republicans. It could be whatever. But where does your moral foundation come from?
I have Jacqueline. She said she just downloaded the app.
All right, just give them a second to.
She's chasing.
Okay. So she said her experiences. Okay. Parents. I see people saying their parents. Okay. Yeah, so our parents their moral foundation is formed the same way, right? We get our morals from our parents, but our parents get theirs from their parents, and it's just a continuing cycle of. That's why you see morals change over time. Like in the 1950s and 60s, marriage was a big thing, right? Not so much anymore, right? Because that moral, that's not valued as a moral foundation anymore. Marriage is not valued in that same capacity anymore. Now what's more valued is people having 5 toxic relationships all at the same time. It could change back into where love is a positive thing and a good thing again. But this is just where we at, right? right now. I think for all of us that grew up in the inner cities, right, a lot of our morality comes from our environment, right? You know, a lot of us don't want to have to kill anybody, but if you grow up in the hood, you always know that situation might present itself at some point, right? What are you gonna do? Right? You're in traffic right now, heading home from work, and a dude pulls his gun out on you and pulls it to your head, and you're armed. What are you gonna do? What is your moral foundation gonna allow you to do? Right? Is it gonna let you do choice number one and do what needs to be done? Right? Are you gonna hope that a police officer sees it with choice number two, or are you gonna do number three, do nothing and get shot and get your shit took? You know what I'm saying? These are the decision process that we go through every day on every level. You know, so you know, life experiences, yeah, our experiences that we deal with life. That builds our, you know, I know not to trust certain people because they do foul shit behind closed doors. That's how we build our moral foundations, right? Okay, my friend Robbie here, he said his parents growing up in Catholic school. Yup. Yeah, change is the only constant in life. That's right. We always in the process of changing. Every day, you're gonna be a different person that you were today from what you were today because you know something different now that you didn't know. Okay, tomorrow you're gonna know something, and the day after that you're gonna know something that you didn't know the day before. So we're always in the process of changing. That's why if anybody that's been in a long relationship, it's almost like you done been in a relationship with two different people. If y'all both growing, you probably met them when you're in your 20s, and now that you're in your 40s, they're a whole different person because they changed as you changed. That's healthy growing. That's healthy progress. But if you still dating somebody that still thinks like they're in high school, they haven't progressed. They haven't changed. Their moral foundation is still rooted in when they were high school. A lot of people's moral foundations are still rooted at high school level. You know?
I have Freestyle Kid just joined the lobby here.
Okay.
Freestyle Kid.
Do they got the mic on?
I'm texting him right now. I'm gonna see if he can get in here.
Let us know if you can hear us, Freestyle.
Let's see here.
I can't hear it.
He's in the regular. He's in the chat room. Let me get him to the voice channel.
Yeah, get him in the voice chat, and so let him have his word. Let him say what he want to say, because that's what all of this is about. When I created this show, it was about having y'all on the show. The show is not really about me. It's about having y'all talking about the things that y'all want to talk about collectively. You know what I'm saying? If I could talk 20 minutes and have y'all going back and forth. Okay, so it's Alyssa's Freestyle Kids. Okay, so let's
all right,
let's get her in here.
Kid, I got you a new invite to the voice chat room.
As soon as you get that invite, join that voice chat so I can get you on the voice chat.
Yeah. All right, I have him. I have Melissa.
Alyssa,
I have you.
Wally Wepa, what's up, man?
what's up? How you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Welcome to the show. Go ahead and shoot your 1, 2. Go ahead, do your thing.
So I think earlier, seeing everybody's responses, that kind of like you said, grab your stuff, put the blunt on. Everybody's moral compass is different based on the surroundings and how they were raised. And you got some people that are pretty ratchet. I'm about to roll the windows up. I'm on live. Can you hear me, bro?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I was raised to, take care of mine, and I feel like that's why I chose answer number 1. And even though a lot of people chose 3, I don't think that they're wrong. I think that living with those consequences of your actions is real hard, and it takes a toll on some people. And I don't think that some people are built to handle those kind of decisions. So they're not wrong, but I feel like 1 was the strongest answer just because you're going to let those other people die because you can't live with that? So
Yeah, like for the sake of transparency, like I chose number 1 too. That was actually like a moral test. So like I'm gonna put the link for that test so everybody could take it, so you can see where you fall in. For a lot of them that required sacrificing somebody for the greater good, almost every time I chose to sacrifice somebody for the greater good, because with me, I don't live under any. I operate under logic. So if you guys remember my second show, how I told you how men and women operate on different forms of, women are more emotional and men operate under more logic, right? If you notice the answers, a lot of the people that chose number 3 that wouldn't do anything were the women. Now, does that mean that they don't have any logic? No, absolutely not. It just means that they're more in tune with their emotions, and their conscience will have a greater effect on them. As to where those with a more masculine side, dominant side of thinking, did what needed to be done right there on the spot and were willing to deal with the consequences later. So yeah, there was no right or wrong answer. I think whatever answer you would have chose would have been the right one. I'm not here to judge anybody's heart. I'm not here to judge anybody's decisions they make. Unless you're a child molester, then I will judge you. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, for us, it's all about growing as individuals, right? And we can have a moral foundation. You know, I had my moral foundation when I was 17 was get money by any means necessary. That's not my moral foundation anymore because it was flawed. It worked for me at that time, and it allowed me to get up and hustle and do what I needed to do. But it also cost me 6 years of my life, right? It cost me family, it cost me friends, and it was a flawed process. So I had to get my mind out the gutter and really reevaluate who I was as an individual. So yeah. Now let me ask you this, Freestyle. Where do you see the world going as far as morals? Like, what do you observe in the world, like on everyday observation?
You got a lot of chiefs and not enough Indians. You got a lot of people thinking that they know everything and they know nothing. You got a lot of people that don't really care about the people around them. They just care about their image. And I feel like, as far as moral compass goes, I think like 70% of the people around me don't have one. Not necessarily in my circle around me, but I mean, as my generation, they don't really have one. You got these adults that are promoting their kids, 7, 8 years old, twerking on live. You know, you got these 3, 4, 5-year-olds cussing all day long, and the parents thinking it's cute. You got these kids that are 14, 15 years old in the streets, you know, fighting with each other, shooting, and their parents like, yeah, my kid's tough, my kid sells drugs, my kid does that. I think it starts with the parent. Like, I grew up around, you know, all you guys. So you guys set the tone for me, like what not to do. No offense to you, Wally, but what not to do at that age. You know, and even though I did some of that stuff, as I got older and watched you guys even more, it just taught me, like, move differently. And then I feel
exactly, and that's the whole goal behind all of this. Like, if anybody could ever use my life as an example of what not to do and it makes their life better, then I'm all for it, because that's what this is all about, right? It's supposed to be identifying, looking at what not to do from people, right? In order to know what we want in this world, we got to know what we don't want, right? And if you see somebody, you know, damn, I don't want to be standing on the corner all day. I don't want to. And that motivates you to do something more, then that's what we're supposed to be doing out here. So that's the right approach to this. I was fortunate growing up. You know, a lot of the friends that I had were older than me, right? And they always used to tell me, "Go to school, man. This shit, don't do this, do that." I didn't listen to them all the time, right? Because I was one of those people that I thought I knew everything, right? I was always smart. I was smart. So I was in the major work program growing up in school during elementary, so like knowledge was never a problem. I was lazy and I didn't want to apply it, right? So it always gets in a situation where my moral foundation was flawed, and all my decisions that I made with that moral compass were flawed ones, right? And when you get back to when you're talking about too many chiefs, not enough Indians, that comes from our moral compass thinking that we already have all the answers. And the reason why people feel they have all the answers is because they're very entrenched in their paradigms. You know, if I was to go ask somebody, you know, when you go ask somebody for marriage advice, if you go ask somebody that's in church for their advice, they would swear on the Bible that the advice that they're giving you is the right answer. If you was to go ask somebody that's a witch or somebody that does voodoo or something, right, about something, they would swear on everything that the advice that they give you is right, because we all think that our version of the truth is the objective truth, the empirical truth, and it's only a perception of the grand thing. So yeah, that's really good. Do you got anything else that you want to say before we get off?
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there while people are listening. Wally helped me out in many different ways. Like he said, you know, people look at things they don't really look at things from different aspects. They take one ideology and run with it. And I think talking to you this past year, you know, you've given me all these different books to read, and it's really opened up my mind to things I didn't know and different ways of looking at stuff, like as far as religion goes, politics, and just self growth. So I really appreciate you for doing this podcast, bro.
And I thank you for coming on, and I thank you for being a big supporter. You know, like the thing with me is I really like seeing my people from my community winning. So what I try to do is put us in a position to win. See, because if all of us are winning, then I win. Because that's my goal. That's my objective, is to have my people winning. So, you know, the whole thing, you know, I remember a friend of mine, he posted a meme yesterday, and he said that, you know, a lot of these dudes that we considered OGs, right? They were promoting death, and they were promoting prison and destruction. And, you know, he was right. You know, a lot of the people that, you know, that we considered guides, right, were flawed individuals because their moral compass was flawed. And then we adopted these ideas in our life, and then we went down the same road. I know a lot of tough people in the cemetery, man. I know a lot of dudes that were tough as nails. You know what I'm saying? And they dead now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because at some point, there wasn't that next level of evolution. And I was almost there. You know what I'm saying? I lost count of the times where I was almost in Riverside too, right? Because I wasn't using my brain. I didn't have a moral compass that allowed me to make decisions that was conducive to survival. You know what I'm saying? And everybody that's there is not there because they made a mistake. Some people were there that don't deserve to be there at all. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to make it seem like people are there because they did things but some people are, and we need to be real about that, right? Because the minute that we get to glorifying, you know what I'm saying, people that died living foul, then we're going to continue to have that perpetuated in our communities. You know what I'm saying? We have to be the ones. We got to be able to pull our people to the side and check them when they doing stupid shit. You know what I'm saying? That's something that we took out of the hood because we don't want to look like haters. You know what I'm saying? If I'm doing some stupid shit, pull me to the side and check me. You know what I'm saying?
Like,
because I'm an adult, right? And I should be able to handle it. And I know that this person really cares about me enough to be like, yo, my dude, what are you doing? And it don't have to be something hostile. It could be like, yo, what you doing right there is kind of flawed, you know? And there's a way that we could do it where we don't come off as condescending and we don't come off as being an asshole. But I thank all of y'all for support. I mean, I love y'all to death. You know what I'm saying? For me, I never imagined doing a podcast. I mean, again, I'm going to emphasize this every show because every show that I do this is like a surprise for me that I'm even here. I'm 6 episodes in, you know, like gradually we're starting adding little things to the show. As you can see, we're starting to get the graphics up. Eventually, I want to get the green screen. You know, I want to have people here at the studio sitting next to me. You know what I'm saying? It's the Living Proof podcast. It's not the Wally Wild podcast. It's none of that. So, you know.
That's a good question in the chat right there.
Which one is that? Read it to me.
Okay. I think it's easy for some to have chosen number 1. Just reading the scenario without an attachment to the injured person. Would it change your response if the injured person was dying and still was alive and it was your child or a loved one?
Yes, that is a good question. And somebody actually asked that during the discussion. And I think for me, my decision would still be the same because we're all going to die anyway if I don't do it. Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll jump in the water with my son. Right? Because I'm not going to be able to go on with my life knowing that I just had to get rid of my son to save everybody. So I'll sacrifice myself with my child. Right? But that's where my moral foundation is. Right? That's what my mom said she would do when I asked my mom the question. She said, I'll jump in the water and nobody will have to get off because my conscience won't allow me to live knowing that I had to get rid of somebody else to live. This is what we call survivor's remorse. Right? A lot of people suffer from this. If you ever had somebody that's been in a severe car accident or something where somebody has died, a lot of the people that survive, they feel remorse. They feel like they should have went instead. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, this is a real deep, complex topic. We didn't even really scratch the surface today. We just really got like, you know, a little bit into it. But I just wanted to make this introduction to y'all because it's important that we had these conversations in public. You know, too many times we're talking about bullshit. We're talking about what Trump doing and what Biden doing. Both of them are clowns with low moral foundations. So right now we're talking about morality, and the very people that we're going to vote for president, both of them have low moral foundations. You see what I'm saying? This is why it's important that we talk about this, because if we would have had this conversation 6 months ago before the election, we would have been like, we don't want neither one of these clowns. You understand? So with that being said, I want to thank y'all for coming out for episode 6. Y'all know my door is always open. If y'all ever want to expand on the conversation, you know, it don't have to be on the podcast. Y'all can come to my house. We talk, we build. You know how I do it. I'm available. Again, this is our show. So I don't ever want y'all thinking that y'all don't have a say. So you don't have to agree with anything I say. I won't, but I will still give you the platform to speak your mind, because I value free speech. I value dialogue. I value intelligence, and I value us overall more than anything. I value our community. So if you like what you see, I know I hate sounding like a bum putting the cash app out there, but you know, at the end of the day, I have production costs and I have bills. You know what I'm saying? So if you like what you see, and if this is something that you want to continue to be a part of, you know, you could just a dollar ain't gonna kill you, you know. So, you know, share. If you can't send $1, like this, subscribe, share. You know, somebody else might want to send $1. So with that being said, I thank y'all for tuning in today. Peace out.